The irony of being a cultural anthropologist is that I spend my life uncovering other people's secrets while desperately hiding my own. Standing in the bustling hotel ballroom, watching the wedding preparations unfold, I felt that familiar ache in my chest, the one that's been there for 24 years since the day I gave up my baby boy. My name is Prudence, and today my daughter Aurora is getting married. I should be focused solely on her happiness, but my hands are trembling as I adjust the flower arrangements, trying to keep myself busy. "Mom, stop fussing with everything." Aurora laughs, swatting my hands away from the centerpiece I've rearranged 3 times. "The flowers are perfect. You're more nervous than I am." If she only knew. "Sorry, sweetheart, just want everything to be perfect for you and Hector." His name catches in my throat, like it has since the day Aurora first introduced us 6 months ago. "Speaking of Hector," my sister Quinn's voice cuts through the air like a knife. "Have you seen him yet today, Prudence? He's such a wonderful young man. So, well-bred." I catch the slight emphasis she puts on those last words, the familiar judgment in her tone. Quinn has always been expert at wielding words like weapons. "He's getting ready with the groomsmen," Aurora says, oblivious to the tension. "Dad's helping them with their boutonnieres." My father Franklin appears in the doorway, his once commanding presence now diminished by age, but no less intimidating to me. "The men are all set," he announces, then fixes me with a look that still makes me feel 16. "Prudence, a word." I follow him into the hallway where he straightens his tie unnecessarily. "I trust you're keeping yourself together today?" "Of course, Father. Why wouldn't I be?" "Don't play coy. This wedding, it must bring up certain memories." Before I can respond, Hector himself rounds the corner, adjusting his cufflinks. My heart stops. In that moment, as he raises his hand to wave, I see it. The distinctive crescent-shaped birthmark on his right palm, identical to the one I memorized in the few precious hours I held my son before they took him away. "Hi, Prudence," Hector calls out cheerfully. "Everything looking good in there?" I force myself to breathe, to smile. "Perfect. You look very handsome." "Thanks, though I'm nervous as hell." He laughs, running that marked hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it makes my chest ache. "Never thought I'd be lucky enough to marry someone like Aurora." My father clears his throat. "Perhaps you should check on the bride, Prudence." "Actually," I say, seizing the moment, "Hector, I've been meaning to ask, that birthmark on your hand, it's quite unique." His face lights up. "Oh yeah, my mom, my adoptive mom, I mean, always said it was my lucky charm. Born with it." I see my father stiffen beside me. Quinn appears as if summoned, her heels clicking rapidly across the marble floor. "Hector, dear, the photographer wants some pre-ceremony shots with the groomsmen." "Right, of course." He gives me another warm smile. My smile, I realize with a jolt. And heads off. Quinn grabs my arm, her fingers digging in. "What do you think you're doing?" I pull away. "Interesting that you never mentioned Hector was adopted when Aurora first introduced him." "Why would I? It's not exactly dinner conversation, is it?" "No," I say quietly. "But it might have been relevant information for me." Our father steps between us. "This is neither the time nor place." "When is the time, Father? When was it ever the time to discuss what you and Quinn did?" "Prudence," he warns, but I'm already walking away, my mind racing. Back in the bridal suite, Aurora is twirling in her dress while her cousin Tiffany takes photos on her phone. "Mom, what do you think?" she asks, beaming. I look at my beautiful daughter about to marry her own brother and feel the weight of 2 decades of secrets threatening to crush us all. "You look perfect, sweetheart," I manage to say. Tiffany, ever observant, tilts her head. "Are you okay, Aunt Prudence? You look like you've seen a ghost." In a way, I have. The ghost of a baby boy with a crescent moon on his palm, coming back to haunt us all. As I watch Aurora adjust her veil, I realize I have less than an hour to decide whether to speak up or let this wedding proceed. Either choice promising to shatter our family forever. My phone buzzes with a text from Quinn. "Don't you dare ruin this day. Remember what's at stake. I delete the message and look up to see Hector's adoptive mother Susan entering the room, carrying a box of old family photos she wants to display at the reception. As she sets it down, a single photograph slips out, a baby's hand with a familiar crescent-shaped mark. My heart stops. The truth isn't just knocking anymore, it's breaking down the door. I couldn't take my eyes off that fallen photograph. Before Susan could notice, I snatched it up, my hands shaking as I stared at the image that confirmed my worst fears. "Oh, that's one of Hector's baby pictures," Susan said, reaching for it. "He was such a beautiful child." "He was 6 months old here?" I asked, my voice barely steady. "Yes. How did you know?" "Because I had an identical photo hidden in my desk at home, taken the day before I signed the adoption papers." Before I could respond, Quinn appeared in the doorway. "Susan, could you help with the guest book setup?" And Prudence a moment. Quinn practically dragged me into an empty conference room, closing the door with unnecessary force. "Stop this right now." "Stop what? Recognizing my own son? Lower your voice." She glanced nervously at the door. "You gave up any right to call him that 24 years ago." The memories flooded back, being 16, pregnant, terrified. Quinn, 20 at the time, standing beside our father as he laid out my options. "You mean when you and father forced me to give him up? We gave you a chance at a real life. Look at you now, successful, respected. Would that have happened if you'd been a teenage mother? You don't know that. You never gave me the choice." "Choice?" Quinn laughed bitterly. "You were a child yourself. Father made the right decision. The right decision. To arrange my son's adoption through your husband's law firm, to never tell me where he went, and now, by some cosmic joke, he's marrying his own sister." Quinn's face went pale. "You can't prove anything." "That birthmark is proof enough. And that photo. Photos can be coincidental." She stepped closer, her voice dropping. "Think about what you're considering. You'll destroy everything. Aurora's happiness. Hector's life, this whole family." "This family?" I spat the words. "The one that shipped me off to Aunt Martha until the baby was born? The one that told everyone I was at a special academic program? We protected you. You protected yourselves, your reputations, your precious social standing." A knock at the door made us both jump. Tiffany poked her head in. "Sorry to interrupt, but Aurora's asking for both of you. It's almost time." Quinn composed herself instantly, smoothing her dress. "Of course, dear. We'll be right there." As Tiffany left, Quinn grabbed my arm. "Listen to me carefully. You have exactly 1 hour to decide if you want to blow up everyone's lives. Think about Aurora. Think about what this would do to her." I pulled away from her grip. "I am thinking about Aurora and Hector and the truth they both deserve to know." Back in the bridal suite, Aurora was putting on her grandmother's pearl necklace, a family heirloom that should have gone to me, but Quinn had somehow ended up with it. "Mom, can you help me with the clasp?" As I fastened the pearls, I caught our reflection in the mirror. Mother and daughter, secrets and lies stretched between us like invisible threads. Aurora's eyes met mine in the glass. "You seem sad," she said softly. "Just emotional. It's a big day." "Tell me about it." She turned to face me. "You know what's funny? Sometimes I look at Hector and see something so familiar, like I've known him my whole life. Isn't that crazy?" My heart clenched. "Not crazy at all." Bentley, Quinn's husband, appeared in the doorway. "5 minutes until we start. Everyone ready?" I watched him exchange a loaded glance with Quinn. He knew. Of course he knew. His law firm had handled the adoption. How many of them had been in on this conspiracy of silence? "Actually," I said, "I need to check something in my car. I'll be right back." I hurried to the parking lot, yanked open my car door and grabbed my laptop bag. Inside was a worn manila envelope I'd carried to every major event in my life for the past 24 years, waiting for the right moment, or maybe the wrong one, to open it. Inside were my copies of the adoption papers, a handful of photos, and a letter I'd written to my son but never sent. The final item was a DNA test I'd taken 6 months ago after first meeting Hector. I hadn't opened the results yet, too afraid of what they might confirm. "What are you doing?" I turned to find my father standing there, leaning on his cane. The years hadn't been kind to him, but his eyes were still sharp as ever. "Getting proof," I said, holding up the envelope. "Proof will only hurt them both." He stepped closer. "You want revenge, Prudence? Fine, take it out on me, but leave those kids alone." "This isn't about revenge. It's about truth." "Truth?" He shook his head. "Truth is what we make it. Right now, the truth is that two young people are in love and about to start their lives together. They're siblings, Father. That's the truth. They're strangers who fell in love, unless you destroy that with your selfish need for closure." The wedding march began to play faintly from inside the hotel. Time was up. I had to decide, right now, whether to let my children commit an innocent but horrible mistake or tear their world apart with the truth. I clutched the envelope tighter and headed back inside. The envelope felt like it was burning through my clutch bag as I made my way back to the bridal suite. Aurora was already lined up with her bridesmaids, but I caught Susan alone in the hallway, straightening Hector's boutonniere in a way that made my heart ache. "Susan," I said, keeping my voice low, "could we talk for a moment? About Hector's adoption?" Her hands froze on the flowers. "What about it?" "The agency that handled it. Was it Riverside Family Services?" "How did you—" She stepped back, studying my face. "Why are you asking these questions today of all days?" Before I could respond, Tiffany appeared beside us, her junior detective instincts clearly triggered by our hushed conversation. "Aunt Prudence, I've been meaning to tell you something interesting. I've been doing some research for my criminology class, practicing with adoption records." Quinn materialized as if summoned by the word adoption, cutting Tiffany off mid-sentence. "Shouldn't you be in line with the other bridesmaids, dear? But I found something." "Now, Tiffany." I watched my niece reluctantly join the lineup, making a mental note to find her later. Susan was still looking at me strangely, but Bentley appeared and whisked her away to her seat, shooting me a warning glance over his shoulder. The wedding coordinator began arranging everyone for the processional. I should have been focusing on Aurora, but my eyes kept drifting to Hector at the altar. The way he stood, the slight tilt of his head, they were mirror images of my father in his younger days. "Last chance, Prudence." Quinn's whisper carried more threat than concern. "Once that ceremony starts." "You knew," I hissed back. "You knew he was back in our lives the moment Aurora brought him home." "I did what was necessary. Always have." "Necessary? Like when you convinced Father that a teenage mother would ruin the family name. You were 16. What kind of life could you have given him? Better than letting him accidentally marry his sister." A sharp intake of breath made us both turn. Tiffany stood frozen behind us, her eyes wide. "What did you just say?" "Nothing," Quinn snapped. "Get in line." But Tiffany stood her ground. "That's what my research was showing. Hector's adoption, the papers were processed through Uncle Bentley's firm, and the dates. They matched when you disappeared to Aunt Martha's, Aunt Prudence." Quinn grabbed Tiffany's arm. "You will not breathe a word of this, do you understand?" "Let her go." I stepped forward, my voice stronger than I felt. "She's right. And I have proof." I opened my clutch and pulled out the DNA test results, still sealed. Quinn's face went white. "You wouldn't dare. Try me." The wedding march started playing, and Aurora appeared at the end of the hall with our father. She looked radiant, innocent, completely unaware of the bomb about to detonate her life. "Please," Susan whispered, and I realized she'd heard everything. "If what you're saying is true, wait until after the ceremony. Let me talk to him first." I looked at my son's adoptive mother, saw the fear and love in her eyes. "You didn't know either, did you?" She shook her head. "The agency, they said the birth mother wanted no contact, that she was at peace with her decision." "Another lie," I said, glaring at Quinn. Add it to the list. The processional began moving. Tiffany, torn between family loyalty and her budding investigative instincts, reluctantly took her place in line. Quinn gripped my arm one last time. Think about Aurora. Think about what this will do to her. I am thinking about Aurora and Hector and 24 years of lies. As the bridesmaids started their walk down the aisle, I saw Bentley whispering urgently to my father. The old man's face was ashen as he held Aurora's arm, leading her toward an impossible future. I clutched the envelope tighter, feeling the weight of 2 decades of silence pressing down on me. The DNA results could confirm what that birthmark and those photos already told me, but did I need them? Looking at Hector's face, my father's face, I knew the truth in my bones. The coordinator gestured for me to take my place in line. In moments, my children would stand before God and family, about to make a terrible mistake. Unless I stopped it. Last chance, Quinn whispered again, but this time I heard the fear in her voice. She knew me well enough to recognize my resolve. I stepped into line, my heart pounding. Ahead of me, Aurora and our father paused at the entrance to the ceremony space. The guests rose, music swelled, and Hector beamed at his bride, his sister, with pure love and joy. I had less than 50 steps to decide. Let the ceremony begin and keep our secrets buried, or speak up and detonate every relationship in this room. I took my first step down the aisle, the truth burning in my throat. Each step down the aisle felt like walking through quicksand. Aurora floated ahead of me, her white dress catching the light from the stained glass windows. Hector's smile grew wider as she approached, and I saw tears forming in his eyes. Eyes that matched mine exactly. The minister began his welcome, his voice echoing through the chapel. Dearly beloved. Tiffany caught my eye from her place among the bridesmaids, subtly holding up her phone. A text message glowed on the screen. I have the adoption records. DNA test might not be needed. Quinn noticed the exchange and shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Behind her, Bentley was typing furiously on his phone, probably trying to contain the situation through legal channels. My father sat rigid, his knuckles white around his cane. If anyone knows any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, the traditional words hung in the air. Quinn's head snapped toward me, her eyes pleading. Susan dabbed at tears, happy tears that would soon turn to something else. The envelope in my clutch felt like it was made of lead. Speak now or forever hold your peace. My throat closed up, the silence stretched, becoming uncomfortable. Aurora and Hector turned slightly, wondering about the delay. I saw my daughter's face radiant with joy, and my son's expression, full of love and hope. The minister cleared his throat, about to continue, when Tiffany suddenly stood up. I have something to say. Tiffany, sit down, Quinn hissed. No. My niece's voice was shaking but determined. I'm sorry, but there's something everyone needs to know. I've been researching adoption records for my criminology project, and I found... This is neither the time nor place, Bentley interrupted, standing up. Then when is? I heard myself say, rising from my seat. When would be a good time to tell them? Aurora turned fully now, her veil swishing. Tell us what? Mum, what's going on? Hector's hand, the one with the birthmark, reached for hers. The gesture broke something in me. That birthmark, I said, my voice carrying in the sudden silence. You got it from me. What? Hector's confusion was genuine, painful to witness. Prudence, don't, my father warned, struggling to his feet, but the truth was already spilling out. Unstoppable now. 24 years ago, I had a baby boy. My family forced me to give him up for adoption. They arranged everything through Bentley's law firm, kept all the records buried. Mom, Aurora's voice cracked. What are you saying? She's saying nothing, Quinn interjected. She's just upset about the wedding. I'm saying, I continued, pulling out the envelope, that I recognized that birthmark the moment I met Hector. I knew in my heart, but I got a DNA test to be sure. and Tiffany found the adoption records that prove it. The chapel erupted in gasps and murmurs. Susan stood up, swaying slightly. But the agency said they told us the birth mother wanted no contact. Another lie. I turned to my children, both of them now. I never wanted to give you up, Hector, and I never wanted to hurt either of you like this, but I couldn't let you. Let us what? Hector's voice was barely a whisper. Aurora's face had gone completely white. She looked at her bouquet, then at Hector's hand still holding hers. Understanding dawned in her eyes, and she dropped the flowers, stumbling backward. We're siblings, Tiffany finished quietly, holding up her phone. The adoption records confirm it. I'm so sorry. Hector released Aurora's hand like it had burned him. This can't be real. This can't be happening. It's happening because of her, Quinn pointed at me accusingly. She could have kept quiet, let you both be happy, but she had to make it about herself. Let them be happy, I shot back. By letting them commit— Stop! Aurora's scream cut through the chaos. Everyone just stop! She turned to our father, tears streaming down her face. Grandpa, is this true? Did you make Mum give up her baby? Did you know who Hector was when I brought him home? The old man seemed to age another decade before our eyes. I did what I thought was best. Best for who? Hector demanded, his voice shaking. For me, for Aurora, or for your precious family reputation. Susan was openly crying now. All these years. We lived in the same city. They could have grown up knowing each other as siblings, but instead— Aurora looked at her wedding dress, then at Hector, horror growing in her expression. Oh, God, we almost— She turned and ran down the aisle, her white dress billowing behind her. Hector stood frozen at the altar, looking lost and betrayed. The guests were whispering. Phones were coming out to record the drama. Aurora, wait! I called after her, but Tiffany was already following her out. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw 24 years of lost moments reflected in his tears. I'm so sorry, I whispered. I should have told you sooner. The truth was out now, but as I watched my daughter flee and my son crumble, I wondered if Quinn had been right about one thing. Some truths might be too devastating to bear. The chapel dissolved into chaos. Guests were standing, phones recording, voices rising in shock and confusion. Susan rushed to Hector's side, but he backed away from her reaching hands. Did you know? He demanded. Any of it? No, sweetheart, I swear. Susan's voice broke. The adoption agency. They told us it was closed, permanent. We never knew. Liar! Quinn's voice cut through the commotion. Everyone's lying. Prudence, show them the DNA test. Open it right now. My hands trembled as I pulled out the envelope. I don't need to open it. Look at him. Look at his face, his gestures. He's my son. Prove it, Bentley challenged, stepping forward. Because right now you've just destroyed 2 lives based on a birthmark and your imagination. Hector's eyes fixed on the envelope. Open it. The chapel fell silent as I tore the seal. The paper shook in my hands as I unfolded it, but before I could read it, Tiffany burst back through the doors. Aurora's locked herself in the bridal suite, she announced, breathless. She's not answering anyone. I'll go, I said, but Quinn blocked my path. Haven't you done enough? You've ruined everything. Their wedding, their relationship, their lives. Better than letting them get married, I shot back. How long were you going to keep this secret? Through their marriage? Their children? The word children made Hector visibly flinch. He grabbed the DNA results from my hands and scanned them quickly, his face draining of colour. It's true, he whispered. 99.9% probability of parent-child relationship. He turned to Susan. Mom, I need air. I can't. He stumbled down the aisle and out the door. Susan started after him, but my father's voice stopped everyone. Let him go. The old man looked ancient now, defeated. Let them both process this. Process this? I rounded on him. Like I got to process being sent away, like I got to process having my baby taken from me? You were 16. I was a mother. His mother. I pointed at the door Hector had just fled through. You had no right. I had every right, he roared, suddenly finding his old authority. I was protecting this family. You were protecting yourself, Tiffany interrupted. Everyone turned to stare at her. She held up her phone. I found the original paperwork. The adoption wasn't just about Aunt Prudence being young. There was a scandal brewing about to hit the newspapers. Something about misappropriated church funds. The timing of the adoption, it was a trade-off, wasn't it? The church agreed to bury the financial story if the situation with Prudence was handled quietly. The colour drained from my father's face. Quinn gasped. Father, is that true? He didn't answer, but his silence said everything. Oh my God, I breathed. It wasn't even about me being too young. It was about money. Your money. The guests were riveted now, watching our family implode in real time. Someone was definitely streaming this live. Get out, I told the onlookers. All of you. This wedding is obviously cancelled. As the murmuring crowd filed out, Susan approached me slowly. I need you to understand something. Whatever the circumstances, Hector was loved, is loved. We may not share blood, but he is my son too. I know, I said softly. I saw that in how you raised him. I'm not trying to take him from you. Then what are you trying to do? Bentley demanded. I'm trying to stop my children from making a terrible mistake. I'm trying to finally tell the truth. The truth? Quinn laughed bitterly. The truth is you couldn't leave well enough alone. You had to play the victim, the wronged mother. Consequences be damned. Consequences like letting siblings marry each other? Stop saying that. Everyone turned. Aurora stood in the doorway, her makeup streaked with tears, her wedding dress crumpled. Stop talking about us like we're not real people, like we're just some tragedy in your family drama. She walked down the aisle, stopping in front of me. You knew. You knew for months, didn't you? You let us plan this whole wedding. Let us fall deeper in love. Why didn't you tell us sooner? I was afraid of losing you both. Well, congratulations. Her voice was ice. Now you might have managed exactly that. She turned to Quinn and our father. And you? You've been lying to everyone for decades, playing with people's lives like they're chess pieces. Aurora, sweetheart, Quinn started. Don't. Just don't. She pulled off her veil and let it fall to the floor. I need to find Hector. Not like before, but because right now he's the only other person who understands exactly how this feels. She walked out, leaving us all standing in the wreckage of secrets finally exposed. Through the stained glass windows, I could see guests still lingering in the parking lot, hungry for more drama. But the real drama was just beginning. 24 years of lies were unraveling, and none of us would emerge unscathed. I found them in the hotel's garden, sitting on opposite ends of a stone bench. They weren't speaking, just staring ahead, their matching profiles a punch to my gut. Tiffany stood nearby, acting as both guard and mediator. They won't let anyone else near them, she whispered as I approached. Not even Susan. Aurora spotted me first. Did you come to apologize again, or maybe drop another bomb? I came to listen, I said, staying a few feet away. If you'll let me. Hector turned, and the pain in his eyes made me flinch. Listen to what? How we feel about discovering we're siblings on our wedding day. How we've been living a lie. You're not the only ones who've been living a lie. Quinn's voice came from behind me. She walked into the garden, followed by our father, who looked like he'd aged a decade in the past hour. Oh, this should be good, Aurora said bitterly. More family secrets? Quinn wrung her hands. What happened back then? It wasn't just about father's scandal or Prudence's age. I was pregnant too. The silence that followed was deafening. What? I whispered. I lost the baby at 3 months. Nobody knew except father and Bentley. When you got pregnant, Prudence, Quinn's voice cracked. I was so angry, so jealous. It seemed unfair that you, the irresponsible one, could have what I'd lost. So you punished me? Punished my son? I convinced father that adoption was the only option. used his scandal as leverage. She looked at Hector. I made sure you went to a good family, but I wanted you far away from us, from my pain. Our father stepped forward, leaning heavily on his cane. I let my shame and Quinn's grief cloud my judgment. The money, the scandal, they were excuses. The truth is, I failed all of you. Failed us? Hector stood up. You destroyed us. Do you have any idea what this feels like? To discover the person you love most in the world is your sister. Aurora made a small broken sound. We talked about having children. Stop, I pleaded. You couldn't have known. But you knew! Aurora shot to her feet. You knew for months. Every dress fitting, every planning session, you sat there and watched us fall deeper into this nightmare. I tried to find the right moment. The right moment? Hector's laugh was hollow. Maybe before I proposed? Before we fell in love? Before we... He cut himself off, looking sick. Tiffany stepped forward. There's something else you should know. She held up her phone. The adoption records show more than just the connection. They show a pattern of similar arrangements through Uncle Bentley's firm. Other families, other secrets. Quinn went pale. Bentley said those records were sealed. They were. I'm just very good at what I do. Tiffany looked at me. This wasn't just about your baby, Aunt Prudence. It was a whole operation. Rich families making problems disappear. My father sank onto the bench. Bentley assured me it was all legal. Legal doesn't mean right, I said. Where is Bentley now? Gone, Quinn whispered. He left as soon as Tiffany mentioned the records, probably destroying evidence as we speak. Aurora stood up suddenly. I can't process all this right now. My wedding day has turned into some kind of twisted crime documentary. Aurora? Hector reached for her automatically, then pulled back. They both flinched at the instinctive gesture. Don't, she said softly. I need space. From all of you. She turned to leave, but stopped short. Susan stood in the garden entrance, holding a small wooden box. Before you go, she said, there's something you both should have. She opened the box, revealing a stack of letters. These came to our house over the years. No return address, but now I know. She looked at me. They're from your mother. Your real mother. You wrote to me? Hector's voice cracked. Every year on your birthday, I whispered. I never knew if they were delivered. I kept them all, Susan said. I always felt you should have them someday. Aurora stared at the letters. Did you write to me too? Every day in my heart, I said. But you were with me. These letters, they were my only connection to your brother. Hector took the box with trembling hands. I can't. I need time. We all do, Aurora said. She looked at Hector, really looked at him, for the first time since the revelation. We need to figure out who we are to each other now. Your family, Quinn said quietly. However twisted the path, however much we all messed up, that's the truth. Truth? Aurora's laugh was bitter. The truth is that everyone in this family is really good at keeping secrets, but really bad at being honest. She walked away, her wedding dress trailing in the grass. Hector clutched the box of letters and followed, keeping his distance but clearly needing to be near the only other person who understood his pain. I watched my children leave together, yet further apart than they'd ever been. The sun was setting behind the hotel, casting long shadows across the garden where a wedding should have happened. Instead, we stood in the wreckage of decades of secrets, wondering if anything would ever be right again. The hotel bar was nearly empty when Tiffany found me there an hour later. She slid onto the stool next to mine, placing her phone on the counter. Aurora's checked into a room upstairs, she said. Hector's in his car in the parking lot reading your letters. I stared at my untouched wine. And Susan? Talking to the wedding planner about refunds. She paused. The police are here. That got my attention. What? Not for you. For Uncle Bentley. Turns out those adoption records I found. There were irregularities, money changing hands that shouldn't have, missing paperwork. And get this, some of the birth certificates were falsified. Prudence. Quinn's voice made us both turn. She looked exhausted, her perfect makeup streaked with tears. The police want to talk to all of us. Apparently my husband's been running quite the operation through his firm. Did you know? I asked. About the illegal adoptions? No. About the money? She sank onto a bar stool. I knew we were comfortable. I never asked questions. Like you never asked questions about what happened to my baby. I deserved that. She ordered a drink. But you're not innocent either, Prudence. You knew for months about Aurora and Hector. Stop fighting, Tiffany interrupted. The police need statements about the adoption process. They're talking to Hector now. As if summoned by his name, my son appeared in the doorway. His eyes were red and he held one of my letters in his hand. You wrote that you used to sing "You Are My Sunshine" to me in the hospital, he said, his voice rough. Susan, my mom, she always sang that too. Said it felt right somehow. Hector, Susan appeared behind him. The police need to speak with me about the adoption paperwork. I'll come with you, he said, but stopped short. I mean, if you want me to. I'll always want you with me. Susan's voice broke. You're my son, no matter what these records show. They left together, leaving me with Quinn and Tiffany. The bartender tactfully moved to the other end of the bar. Aurora's asking for you, Tiffany said softly. Both of you. We found Aurora in her hotel room, still in her wedding dress, surrounded by crumpled tissues. She looked up as we entered. I've been thinking, she said, about what happens next, about what we tell people. The truth is already out there, Quinn said. Those guests had phones. The truth? Aurora laughed sharply. Which truth? That my mother gave up her baby? That my aunt and grandfather conspired to hide it? That I almost married my brother? Aurora, I started, but she held up her hand. No, let me finish. I've been reading the messages coming in. Everyone's got an opinion. Everyone's choosing sides. But you know what nobody's talking about? How Hector and I feel. Quinn sat on the edge of the bed. Tell us. We're victims here. All of us. You, she pointed at Quinn, lost a baby and let it poison you. You, she turned to me, lost your son and let fear keep you silent. And now Hector and I, we've lost each other. But not really, because we never really had each other. Not the way we thought. A knock at the door revealed Hector and Susan, followed by my father, leaning heavily on his cane. The police are done with us for now, Susan said, but they'll need to speak with everyone involved in the adoption. Including Bentley? Quinn asked quietly. If they find him, Hector said. He's gone, left everything behind. My father sank into a chair. I never thought. The money he paid for my silence about the church funds, it came from these illegal adoptions. It wasn't just about the money, Tiffany added, checking her phone. The records show a pattern. Rich families, scandals buried, babies relocated. It was about power and control. And now? Aurora stood, her wedding dress rustling. What happens now? Now we tell the truth, I said. All of it. No more secrets. The whole truth. Quinn looked terrified. About everything? Everything. I turned to my children, both of them. You deserve that much. Everyone deserves that much. Hector moved to stand beside Aurora, close but not touching. We need to figure out how to be siblings, how to love each other differently. Aurora nodded, tears falling. And we need our parents, all of our parents, even the ones who messed up. Susan stepped forward. We can figure this out, together. My father cleared his throat. The police, they'll want to know about my role in all this, about the church funds, about pressuring Prudence. Then you'll tell them, Quinn said firmly. We all will. No more hiding. Tiffany's phone buzzed. The media's outside. They want statements. We all looked at each other. This broken, complicated family brought together by lies, but maybe, just maybe, saved by truth. Together, Aurora said, reaching for Hector's hand, then mine. We face this together. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something like hope. The media circus outside the hotel had grown into a full 3-ring spectacle. Camera lights flashed through the lobby windows as our family huddled near the entrance. "Ready?" I asked, looking at Aurora and Hector. "No," Aurora smiled weakly. "But when has that stopped us today?" We stepped out together into the wall of cameras and microphones. The questions came fast and furious. Is it true about the illegal adoption ring? Did you know they were siblings? What about the church scandal? Aurora raised her hand, still in her wedding dress, and the crowd quieted. "Today was supposed to be my wedding day," she began, her voice steady. "Instead, it became the day our family's secrets finally came to light. Yes, Hector and I discovered we're siblings. Yes, there was an illegal adoption network. And yes, our family made terrible mistakes." Hector stepped forward. "But we're not here to sensationalize our pain. We're here because the truth matters. Because other families deserve to know if their adoptions were part of this network." "Bentley's firm handled dozens of adoptions," Tiffany added, holding up her phone. "We're working with the authorities to identify other affected families," a reporter pushed forward. "Quinn, what do you say to allegations that your husband orchestrated this entire operation?" Quinn straightened her spine. "I say that my husband will have to answer for his crimes, as will anyone else involved, including me." "And what about the church funds?" another shouted at my father. He gripped his cane tighter. "I made mistakes, used my position to hide uncomfortable truths. That ends today." Susan moved to stand beside Hector. "What matters now is healing. These children, all of them, deserve better than the secrets we built around them." "And what happens next?" someone called out. I looked at my children, really looked at them. Aurora, strong and poised even in her pain. Hector, holding himself together while his world fell apart. Both of them victims of choices made before they were born. "What happens next," I said, "is we rebuild. Not the lies and secrets, but something true. Something real." "Starting with this," Aurora added, reaching for her brother's hand. "Learning to love each other in a new way. The right way." Hector squeezed her hand. "We're not victims of our parents' choices anymore. We're survivors who get to choose what happens next." The cameras flashed faster, but something had shifted. The hunger for scandal was being replaced by something else. Recognition of a family choosing truth over comfort. Healing over hiding. "One last question," a reporter called. "What would you say to other families who might be affected by this adoption network?" "Come forward," Tiffany answered. "The police have set up a hotline. Don't let fear keep you silent." "And to those who kept these secrets?" another pressed. Quinn stepped forward. "I'd say it's time to stop protecting reputations and start protecting people. The truth hurts, but secrets destroy." As if to punctuate her words, a police car pulled up. 2 officers stepped out, and Quinn straightened her shoulders. "That's my cue," she said quietly. "Time to make my statement official." "I'll go with you," our father said. "My statement too." Aurora hugged them both before they left with the officers. The media surged forward again, but Tiffany and Susan created a barrier, guiding us back inside. In the quiet of the lobby, Aurora finally let her composure crack. "I need to get out of this dress." "I'll help," Susan offered, then looked at me. "Both of us?" I nodded, understanding the olive branch being extended. Hector watched them go, then turned to me. "Those letters you wrote, every single one talked about how much you loved me, how much you wanted me." "I never stopped wanting you, never stopped loving you." "I know that now." He pulled out the last letter from his pocket. "This one's different, though. It's recent." I recognized it, the letter I'd written but never sent after meeting him 6 months ago. "You knew then," he said. "You wrote about seeing your smile on my face, about hearing Dad's laugh in mine. Why didn't you tell me right away?" "Because I was afraid. Of losing you again. Of hurting Aurora. Of facing what my silence had allowed to happen." "Fear makes us do terrible things," he said. Keep terrible secrets. Not anymore, I promised. No more secrets. Aurora and Susan returned. Aurora now in simple clothes, looking more like herself. So, she said, what now? Now we figure out how to be a family, Susan answered. All of us. Together, Hector added, reaching for both his mother's hands. Aurora joined our circle, completing it. Outside, cameras still flashed, police lights still pulsed, and somewhere Bentley was running from his crimes. Our family's story would be headlines tomorrow, next week, maybe longer. But standing there holding hands with my children and the woman who'd raised my son, I knew we'd find our way through. Not because it would be easy. It wouldn't. Not because the pain was gone. It wasn't. But because the truth, however hard, had finally set us free. Together, I echoed, and felt their hands tighten around mine in response. The secrets were out. The healing could begin.
I recently experienced an unexpected whirlwind of events after returning from a week-long overseas journey. Shortly after I got back, my mother-in-law, Victoria, phoned me with an air of victory, claiming I had given her $41,000 that I had supposedly saved. I was baffled, as I couldn't recall having such an amount set aside. As a company jewelry designer, I do have some emergency funds in the bank, but I certainly don't keep large sums of cash at home, and my bank card was securely with me. No one else, normally, could access my bank account to withdraw such an amount. During the call, Victoria insisted, "You did give it to me, so I took it from the sideboard drawer. You guys are wealthy, it's fine." I was completely confused but didn't get a chance to clarify, as she quickly added, "Thanks for the fun, count on me next time," and then hung up. Left in shock, I wondered what she was referring to. This mystery lingered until my husband, Matteo, came home and explained the misunderstanding. However, the situation didn't settle there. Over the next month, Victoria called repeatedly. I ignored over 110 of her calls, bewildered but also annoyed by her persistence. Eventually, when she called again, her demanding tone pushed me to answer. She accused, "What do you think you're doing?" Her sharp voice filled the room from my phone's speaker. My name is Delilah, a 27-year-old busy jewelry designer. My husband Matteo, also 27, once had a stable executive assistant job, but now helps manage my growing business. When we got married, my career was just taking off. As my business expanded, Matteo bravely left his job to become my full-time business partner, helping me secure deals with renowned international brands. Despite our success, life isn't without its challenges, particularly concerning Matteo's mother, Victoria. Living alone in the family home, she perceives our lifestyle as lavish and frequently asks us for money. "You always seem to be living so luxuriously. I'm jealous," she often says. For me, attending product launches and dinners with executives is part of my job, but Victoria views these as purely leisure activities and demands the same extravagant lifestyle for herself. Her recent request was money to throw a party for a friend, assuming, once again, that we could easily afford such expenses. I may seem like I can effortlessly afford to fulfill every request for money, but the reality is far from that glamorous image. Despite what it looks like, running a jewelry design business involves hefty expenses and numerous obligations that cannot be ignored. We are not basking in luxury. Every glamorous event and fancy dinner is part of our professional commitments. Victoria, my mother-in-law, often remarks with a sarcastic undertone, "I envy you," failing to grasp the true nature of our expenditures. Although I consistently decline her monetary requests, Matteo, her son and my husband, sometimes relents and gives her money. He rationalizes that keeping her content with some financial help is a small price for peace. For him, it's simpler to just hand her some money rather than endure her disruptive demands. However, Victoria's requests only grow more frequent and extravagant, pushing both of us to our limits. Recently, she demanded a new dress for a swanky gathering she was invited to. When she visited, She tried to persuade Mateo, asking, "Wouldn't a two-piece suit be more appropriate? Everyone will be dressed up. I can't be the only one in old clothes." Despite the availability of cheaper options, what Victoria desires is invariably expensive. She also insisted on a matching handbag, expecting us to cover that cost as well. To manage her frequent demands, Mateo had previously set up a credit card in Victoria's name, advising her to use it judiciously for her expenses. Initially, she overspent wildly, prompting warnings from Mateo. Despite this, her spending habits showed no signs of moderation. Mateo then requested that she inform us before making significant purchases. She complied, albeit superficially, like the time she impulsively bought a lavish ring, apologizing only after the fact. The cost was astronomical. Frustrated, Mateo confronted her, "If you're going to spend like this, can you return the card? We can't cover all these expenses." The credit card, though issued in Victoria's name, had its bills paid by Mateo. Victoria seemed to perceive the credit card as an endless source of funds, not fully grasping that every expense charged to it was ultimately our financial burden. This continuous cycle led Mateo to a tough decision about how to handle the credit situation moving forward, as Victoria's understanding of the financial impact of her actions remained limited. We recently had to place a spending limit on Victoria's credit card due to her excessive shopping, which caused quite a stir when she discovered she couldn't pay during her last shopping trip. "Why couldn't I pay for my shopping the other day?" Victoria stormed in, visibly upset. We explained that her overspending was straining our finances, hence the reduced limit on her card. "It's still enough, right?" we assured her. Victoria, however, felt this was unfair. "Just because you three dress up and go to fancy places, how is what I'm doing any different?" she argued. We tried explaining that our attendance at product launches and parties in luxurious venues was strictly professional, but to Victoria, it appeared as though we were just having fun. Despite her initial frustration, the limit on her card did seem to calm things down somewhat. Occasionally, Victoria still expressed her grievances to Mateo during her visits, but life carried on with fewer disturbances. As the year drew to a close, an exciting opportunity arose for my career. A foreign brand manufacturer proposed expanding business by moving our base overseas. Thrilled by the prospect, I saw it as a chance to elevate my status among top-tier designers. Mateo, managing my career, encouraged taking the leap, emphasizing the rarity of such opportunities. However, considering Victoria's past behavior, we were concerned she might want to join us. "It would be wonderful to live overseas. I want to come too," she declared when we informed her about the move. We clarified that the relocation was for work purposes, not for leisure, but Victoria seemed skeptical. "You're trying to trick me. You plan to live even more lavishly there without me," she accused. Mateo patiently explained, "We are not moving there permanently. We'll return after our work concludes overseas." Despite our reassurances, Victoria seemed to fear we might leave her behind permanently. Her concerns, although unfounded, highlighted the ongoing challenge of balancing our professional advancements with family dynamics. The repetitive arguments were wearing us down. Both Mateo and I were exhausted. In an attempt to find a compromise, Mateo proposed, "Okay, we can't take you with us, but how about we pay for a week-long trip for you instead?" This suggestion was made in hopes of appeasing Victoria without further straining our patience. "Really? Are you sure?" Victoria asked, her tone mixed with surprise and skepticism. "We'll cover your flight and hotel, but you'll need to manage the rest on your own," Mateo explained. "Yay, thank you," Victoria responded, leaving half-heartedly yet seemingly satisfied with the arrangement. However, the peace was short-lived. A few days later, as Mateo was deep into the logistics for our overseas move, Victoria dropped by unexpectedly. "Hey Delilah," Mateo said that, "but I want to shop over there too. Can you give me some money?" she inquired. I reminded her, What about the card that Matteo gave you, knowing full well that there was a spending limit set on it? That's the thing, Matteo finally took it away from me, she revealed. It appeared she had been reprimanded for her excessive spending and the card had been confiscated, possibly because Matteo was concerned she might misuse it with the fluctuating currency rates abroad. I explained, I can't give you money without Matteo's approval. But can you ask him? It's no use asking him, that's why I'm asking you, she persisted, but eventually left, raising her voice in frustration. During the New Year's, Victoria went on the 9-day trip abroad we had arranged for her. I assumed Matteo had somehow managed to sort out the finances for it. Upon her return, Victoria called me excitedly to share her experiences. I'm back. It was so fun, she chirped from the other end of the phone, recounting her sightseeing and dining adventures, and adding, I overbought souvenirs and couldn't fit them in my suitcase, so I had them shipped here. Can't wait for them to arrive. That's nice, I replied, feeling somewhat overwhelmed by her enthusiasm. Thanks to the money you saved up, I had a blast, she added. Saved up money? What are you talking about? I was perplexed. I had no recollection of such money. Sure, I had some savings for business emergencies, but that was securely in my bank account, and Victoria couldn't possibly have accessed it. You really didn't notice. You're surprisingly oblivious, she commented. Despite her assertion, I had no memory of the money she mentioned. She claimed to have found $41,000 in our house's sideboard drawer, but why would such an amount be there? I couldn't imagine us leaving such a significant sum unaccounted for. Keeping a large sum of cash at home, especially hidden away in a drawer, was not something we did. Confused, I confronted Victoria, I'm not sure what money you're talking about, but if you took it from our house without permission, that's theft, even if you are family. Do you understand? Victoria, seemingly unfazed, responded nonchalantly, that's why I'm telling you now that I used it. It's a post-factum report. I have no idea about this money, but taking and using it without saying anything is a crime, I continued, increasingly worried that it could have been funds Matteo had earmarked for a crucial business transaction. And if it was meant for an important deal, it's even more serious. While she was on her trip, our business dealings had proceeded without any financial hiccups, so the origin of this money was a mystery. Victoria, however, justified her actions with a sense of entitlement. You two live so extravagantly, so why can't I have a little of that? Think of it as doing a favor for your parent. It's not a big deal, right? This kind of self-entitled reasoning alarmed me. It's one thing to ask for help from her son and his wife, but entirely another to nonchalantly admit to taking money without permission. I'm glad you enjoyed your trip, I replied, still puzzled. I'll ask Matteo about the money when he gets back. Victoria seemed confident that Matteo would understand, claiming, after all, I'm his only mother, and $41,000 isn't much to him. I'll pass the message along, I said, astounded by her lack of awareness. With that, she ended the call, leaving me bewildered about the $41,000. Was it possible we had such a large amount at home? That evening, Matteo returned with a concerned expression. Delilah, do you know about the money I left in the drawer? He asked. 10 days ago, he had withdrawn it from his bank account for an urgent payment. It's gone now. Keeping such a large sum in a drawer, didn't you think it was careless? He questioned, needing the cash immediately for a transaction. No, today Victoria called, saying thanks for the $41,000 and that she had a blast with it. I didn't understand what she meant, I responded. It turned out it was Matteo's money after all, but I was still unsure what the payment was for. Hey, if it wasn't for a business payment, what was it for? I asked, trying to piece together the situation. We've been conducting our financial transactions through bank transfers for quite some time now, so the presence of such a large sum in cash at home was puzzling to me. Although I realized it was Matteo's money, I still couldn't grasp the entire situation. So, Mom took it without saying. Then it's her fault, I concluded, seeking further explanation from Mateo. Mateo then started to unravel the reason behind leaving such a significant amount of cash at home. He had recently limited Victoria's credit card amount after discovering she had been secretly accumulating debts through consumer finance cards and other credit cards she had opened without our knowledge. When Mateo found out about her mounting debts, he confiscated all her cards and prepared cash to settle her debts. He planned to make payments directly to the creditors because giving cash to Victoria would likely lead her to spend it irresponsibly. Mateo explained his decision to use cash instead of bank transfers. A bank transfer would leave a record in our accounts, he said. He wanted to avoid excessive records that might complicate our bookkeeping or raise questions among our business partners. Hence, he chose to pay in cash, handling it personally. Supporting Victoria's overseas trip was akin to a parting gift since, after our impending move abroad, we wouldn't be as readily available to assist her as before. That explained the cash, but the future seemed uncertain. What will become of Victoria now? I pondered. Debt collection notices and payment demands will probably start coming in soon, but since she spent it herself, there's nothing we can do, Mateo remarked with a hint of resignation. A month passed, and as I busied myself with packing for the move, Victoria's calls became increasingly frequent. Mateo advised me to ignore her calls, but the sheer number of them, nearly 110 calls, almost every day, was hard to disregard. Just as I was reflecting on this, my phone rang again. Hesitating at first, I missed the call, but it soon rang again and this time, I answered. Why aren't you answering my calls? I've called so many times. Victoria's voice conveyed a mix of desperation and frustration. I'm sorry, I've been busy with moving preparations. What's wrong? I asked, trying to remain calm and listen to her concerns. It's not just what's wrong, they are asking for money payments almost every day. It's too much. What about Mateo? Have you contacted him? I inquired. He seems to be blocking my calls. I can't get through to him at all. Delilah, you're my only hope now. Please help me, she pleaded, her voice filled with urgency. I was taken aback to learn that Mateo had taken such a drastic measure with his own mother. If he had used the money he had set aside to settle Victoria's debts directly, perhaps this troubling situation could have been avoided. Now, Victoria was swamped with collection letters from finance companies and consumer lenders. The calls from collectors were relentless, and she seemed utterly powerless to manage them. This was a scenario I had only seen play out in TV dramas, not something I ever expected to witness in our lives. I'll mention it to Mateo, but I can't say what he'll do. A mother in trouble, it's a son's duty to help, right? Please ask him for me, Victoria pleaded at the end of our call. However, with our business expansion overseas looming, funds were tight, and we couldn't afford to assist Victoria further. Besides, it was her own mismanagement that led to this predicament. She had squandered the money Mateo had painstakingly gathered to pay off her debts on a lavish trip instead. When I relayed Victoria's request to Mateo, after he returned home exhausted, he dismissed it rather coldly. I had planned to sort things out before we left, but she wasted the opportunity herself, he stated flatly. True enough, the money was initially intended to clear Victoria's debts. Her choice to use it for extravagant personal enjoyment left no room for excuses. Despite her continued attempts to reach us, I, following Mateo's lead, set her number to block. Although I wished we could offer some help, being Mateo's mother, there was nothing more I could do if he decided to cut off support. Meanwhile, the day of our move overseas drew closer, and I had to focus on packing. Our home was still cluttered with belongings yet to be boxed. Amidst this, I discovered that Victoria had ended up selling her house to pay off her debts. In addition to the $41,000 Mateo had earmarked for the debt repayment, it turned out she had hidden even more liabilities. The total amount was so vast that even after selling her land and house, she couldn't cover it all. Our family home, it's gone. Are you okay with that? I asked Mateo, noticing the melancholy in his demeanor. How can I be okay? But there's nothing we can do, he responded, his voice tinged with sadness. Losing the house where he grew up must have felt like a significant loss. Having lost my parents' house early in life, I understood the profound sense of loneliness that comes with losing one's family home. But unlike my situation, Mateo had lost his childhood home due to the actions of his living mother, a circumstance I couldn't even begin to fathom. The emotional toll on him was palpable as we prepared for our new life abroad, leaving behind not just a house, but a myriad of unresolved feelings tied to it. Victoria is now living in a modest apartment, struggling to pay off the remaining debts with a part-time job. At her age, finding work is undoubtedly challenging, and I do feel a twinge of sympathy for her situation. However, it's important to recognize that her current predicaments are the direct consequences of her past spending habits. Even in old age, it's crucial to take responsibility for one's actions. Meanwhile, our business venture overseas is flourishing. The move has not only broadened our horizons, but also attracted inquiries from other brands, with offers coming from places I never expected. This level of interest and opportunity is something I couldn't have envisioned back home, and I'm grateful for every bit of it. However, the pace is relentless. I'm so engulfed in work that finding time to sleep is a challenge, let alone exploring our new surroundings. Mateo is equally engulfed in managing everything, which leaves little room for personal time. With our current lifestyle, the thought of starting a family seems more like a distant dream. I often find myself pondering this as I gaze out at the bustling cityscape of this foreign city through the window. The vibrant life outside contrasts sharply with our hectic, enclosed lives, filled with responsibilities and unrelenting schedules.
After a whole month without any contact, Ben caught me off guard by handing me a divorce lawyer's business card, completely skipping the usual greetings or inquiries about my well-being. He casually suggested that paying me $2,000 a month in alimony seemed fair, all while chuckling and with Bella arm in arm with him, mirroring his smug smile. I responded to their divorce proposal with such nonchalance that Ben appeared momentarily taken aback, though he quickly resumed smiling with Bella, confidently noting my apparent lack of strategic thinking, which, in his mind, simplified his plans. Once the divorce was finalized, I was fueled by a desire to enact revenge on both of them, intending to make them regret their actions as part of my path to recovery. My name is Liliana, a 44-year-old who thrives in the realm of illustration and children's book authorship. Drawing isn't just a job for me, it's my passion. Throughout my life, Ben and Bella were significant figures, childhood friends who meant the world to me, with Ben eventually becoming my husband. Our story began unexpectedly when Ben expressed his feelings for me as we were about to embark on different college journeys post-high school. Despite my initial surprise, considering I had thought his affections lay with Bella, I couldn't dismiss Ben's confession, especially since I harbored secret feelings for him. After some deliberation and discussion with Bella, I accepted Ben's proposal. Despite Bella's tumultuous behavior from our teenage years, including her habit of enticing and then discarding boyfriends, she remained a close friend. To keep an eye on her and mitigate any issues, Ben and I often included her in our plans. Ben and I tied the knot at 27, and our lives took a new turn when Bella introduced us to her fiancé Dylan, a commendable professional from a leading company. Dylan, ever so polite and eager to join our circle, was warmly welcomed. Our gatherings, filled with holiday celebrations, vacation trips, and leisurely train rides for drinks, strengthened our bond. However, the dynamic began to unravel when Bella became pregnant 2 years into her marriage. Ben and I, coming from large families, had decided against having children of our own. While we adored kids, the desire for personal freedom and the joys of travel and leisure remained paramount in our lives. Witnessing families with children often brought us a sense of warmth, yet our feelings towards having our own remained neutral. However, when Bella shared the news of her pregnancy, I noticed a shift in Ben's demeanor. He stopped smoking at Bella's request, unable to tolerate the smell during her pregnancy, and began using his vacation time to accompany her to doctor's appointments. I cautioned him, suggesting that Dylan, Bella's husband, might feel sidelined by Ben's constant presence. Ben's rebuttal was firm, emphasizing that Bella needed support and accusing me of lacking compassion. While I did contribute by purchasing necessities, I argued that attending prenatal visits was overstepping boundaries. Ben's frustration was palpable when I suggested that Bella's husband should be the one accompanying her, especially given her anxiety over medical appointments. His defensive stance, implying that my inability to conceive was at the root of my concerns, marked a departure from our usually peaceful interactions. Our relationship, once devoid of conflicts, began to strain under the weight of Bella's pregnancy and only worsened after the birth of her child, Alea. Ben's time and attention increasingly gravitated towards Bella and Alea, straining our marriage further. The tension reached a peak around Alea's 7th birthday, coinciding with her graduation ceremony. The day before the event, I found B rifling through our closet for appropriate attire, a task that seemed unusually pressing given his casual workplace. Yet, for client meetings, a suit was customary, explaining the pile of discarded suits on our bed. His intent to attend Alea's graduation in Dylan's absence struck me as exceedingly inappropriate, sparking an involuntary outburst from me and a visibly bitter reaction from Ben. This incident underscored the growing divide between us, fueled by Ben's unwavering commitment to Bella and her child, a commitment that seemed to eclipse our relationship. Understanding that Begotten fetched Alea from preschool, and acknowledging that I, too, had played this role when requested, it still seemed absurd to me that a mere friend, not related by blood, could consider attending a graduation ceremony essential. Ben's disappointment at my reluctance to support this idea, coupled with his abrupt command to iron a shirt for the event, left our conversation hanging and me feeling bewildered. Feeling cornered, I reached out to Bella, questioning the logic behind Ben's planned attendance without Dylan's knowledge. Bella's casual admission that Dylan was unaware of the graduation date and her plan to inform him post-ceremony was startling. It became clear that Dylan had been kept in the dark about numerous school events, with Ben frequently stepping in to fill a paternal role. This revelation, highlighting a deliberate omission and the preferential treatment of Ben, left me reeling from its sheer insensitivity. Confronting Bella about the unfairness to Dylan only led to a swift and unsettling end to our call, leaving me to grapple with my indignation alone. Nevertheless, I found myself ironing a shirt and preparing a tie for Ben, witnessing him leave for the graduation the next morning. This incident marked a turning point, with Ben and Bella's outings becoming increasingly frequent, escalating from monthly to weekly and eventually thrice a week, stirring Dylan's suspicions. One late evening, Dylan's unexpected visit brought a heavy air of concern. He shared with me the GPS tracking history from Bella's car, which revealed regular stays at a hotel on the days she was supposed to be out with Ben. The implications were clear from Dylan's somber expression. He sought my perspective on the matter, plunging us both into a conversation about the future steps regarding the unsettling discovery of Bella and Ben's actions. Dylan and I, both feeling deeply betrayed, agreed that we needed to take action against Ben and Bella. Our plan for retribution began with fortifying our financial standing. I increased my earnings, having previously focused on domestic chores and caring for Alea, which resulted in a decrease in my income. Meanwhile, Dylan transitioned to working remotely, enabling him to bring Alea to my place whenever Ben and Bella decided to spend time together. Unbeknownst to them, we were aware of their affair and meticulously gathered evidence without their knowledge. As we were on the verge of executing our plan, we stumbled upon a revelation about Alea that made us reconsider. The welfare of young Alea weighed heavily on our decision, leading us to postpone our plans for revenge until she was mature enough to understand the situation. Despite this resolve, I was soon faced with a health crisis that demanded long-term hospitalization, significantly reducing my capacity to work. After informing Dylan about my health issues, I reached out to Ben, only to be met with a dishearteningly indifferent response. His promise to visit felt empty, as his visits became sporadic, and he showed little interest in my well-being. Alea, who had been a constant presence in the early days of my hospitalization, began to withdraw around her 17th birthday, leaving both Dylan and me puzzled by the change in her behavior. Despite our inquiries, Alea remained evasive about the reasons for her distance. The explanation eventually came from Ben, who rarely visited. His once familiar demeanor had shifted drastically, marked by a flashy new appearance. After a long period of absence, he reappeared, not with words of concern, but with the stark action of presenting a divorce lawyer's business card, foregoing any pretense of empathy or interest in my condition. This moment underscored the profound changes in our relationships and the complexities we faced amidst personal tribulations and the unfolding drama with Ben and Bella. When Ben gleefully suggested a divorce, mentioning an alimony of $2,000 a month as if it were a favor, Bella stood by him, both of them sharing a smirk of triumph. Unfazed, I agreed to the divorce, which momentarily caught Ben off guard, but he quickly resumed his smug exchange with Bella. It was Ben's lack of foresight that played into my hands, allowing my revenge plan to unfold seamlessly after the divorce was finalized. I wasted no time. My first step was to collaborate with Dylan, planning a hospital transfer for myself and ensuring he and Alea were settled close by. My lawyer took over all communication regarding the divorce and settlement, signifying the start of a new chapter. Dylan moved closer with Alea, who, despite her somber demeanor, visited me daily, which brought me joy. I instructed Ben to dispose of any belongings left in our shared home. I wanted no remnants of a life tainted by betrayal. Shortly after these arrangements were made, Ben's confusion became evident through a barrage of missed calls on my phone. Returning his call, I was met with chaos, a distressed real estate agent, and Bella's frantic yelling in the background. Ben's demand to know why they were being forced out of the house was met with my calm explanation. The house was mine, a workspace I'd rented to support my graphic designer career before we lived together. At that time, I couldn't afford to maintain two homes, and Ben, lacking sufficient income to live independently, moved in with me. Thus, he had never contributed to the rent or utility bills. The realization that the house was not a shared asset, but solely my responsibility, highlighted the oversight and entitlement Ben and Bella had felt towards what was mine, marking the beginning of their unraveling and the fulfillment of my planned retribution. Ben did contribute some money towards living expenses, but it fell short of covering the full costs of our shared space. Regrettably, by the time Ben realized the gravity of his situation, I had already canceled the lease on the room we shared, as it was inconveniently located far from the hospital I had moved to for treatment. This decision was made swiftly, the day after I filed for divorce without prior notice to Ben, leaving him and Bella in a precarious position. The real estate agent, familiar with our circumstances, had assured me they would handle the notification. In the meantime, Dylan and Alea vanished without a trace, and our shared house was sold out from under them. Ben, now desperate and scrambling, suggested a temporary stay in a business hotel as they figured out their next steps. Over the phone, his frustration was palpable, oscillating between anger and pleas for financial assistance. Claiming I had agreed to pay him $22,000, a claim I flatly denied. His response to my denial was a mixture of disbelief and anger, mistakenly believing he could extract financial support from me despite his own wasteful spending. Ben's insistence on receiving money he had not been promised resulted in a heated exchange. Striving to maintain composure, I firmly told him that we were essentially strangers and advised him to cease all direct communication with me, indicating that any further interactions should be through our lawyers. Despite his protests, I ended the call, and after 5 more attempted contacts from him, which I ignored, Ben began to avoid calls from my lawyer as well, showcasing his avoidance of responsibility and the repercussions of his actions. 5 months later, following a temporary leave from the hospital, I made a visit to Ben's parents' home, where I encountered Ben and Bella. The dynamics had shifted dramatically. They appeared diminished and anxious, a stark contrast to their previous demeanor. This confrontation at Ben's parental home was a culmination of their actions, a moment where the consequences of their choices were laid bare, highlighting the complex interweavings of personal decisions, consequences, and the inevitable reckoning that follows. During a tense family gathering, Ben defensively responded to my revelation of our divorce, visibly intimidated by his father's disapproving stare. Despite the circumstances leading to our separation, I had always maintained a warm relationship with my in-laws, often visiting them independently of Ben. Feeling it was important to be transparent about the divorce, I chose to visit and share the news with them. The conversation took a dramatic turn when Ben confirmed his plans to remarry Bella and start anew, positioning Alea as part of this new family unit. His father, clearly perturbed by Ben's dismissal of our shared past, expressed his disapproval with a look that conveyed deep disappointment. Ben, perhaps feeling cornered, presented me with a hotel bill from a recent stay at a luxury establishment, expecting me to shoulder the cost. This action, along with his and Bella's casual demeanor about the significant changes in their lives, including the anticipation of a blood-related grandchild, sparked a wave of disbelief and dismay from his parents. My in-laws, who had always embraced me as part of their family, recognizing the inherent distinction between a daughter-in-law and a mere family friend, were visibly unsettled by the unfolding scenario. Bella's insistence that the birth of Alea would somehow bridge these divides and bring joy, despite the upheaval and heartache caused, seemed to lack any sense of empathy or understanding of the gravity of their actions. In a room charged with tension and disbelief, it was Alea, previously absorbed in her smartphone and silent, who voiced her disgust at the situation. Her candid rebuke cut through the pretense, highlighting the inherent wrongness of the path Ben and Bella were taking. This unexpected moment of clarity from Alea underscored the complexity of family dynamics, the pain of betrayal, and the sometimes surprising sources of wisdom and truth. The room was enveloped in a heavy silence, broken only by Alea's declaration of loyalty to her father, dismissing the notion of any familial ties to Ben based solely on his presence at school events. Alea's words laid bare the reality of her father's exclusion from key moments in her life, a situation she navigated with the conviction that her bond with her father was unbreakable, regardless of Ben's actions. Alea's confrontation with Bella shifted the atmosphere, marking a moment of raw honesty and vulnerability. Turning to me, her voice softened, expressing fear of rejection upon the revelation of her parentage. My reassurance seemed to lift a weight off her shoulders, prompting a heartfelt embrace that underscored the depth of our connection. Despite the complexities surrounding her birth, my affection for Alea remained unwavering, a testament to the years of care and love I had provided. Bella's surprise at my lack of shock over Alea's paternity was interrupted by Dylan's timely entrance. His announcement that the divorce had not been finalized due to overlooked legalities cast a new light on the situation. Bella's premature plans for remarriage, halted by a mandatory waiting period, left her technically still married to Dylan, making Alea legally his daughter. Bella's attempt to assert parental rights over Alea was met with resistance, as Alea's preference to stay with her mother became evident. Bella's frustration was palpable as she faced the consequences of her actions, while Ben's laughter hinted at a deeper understanding of the unfolding drama, possibly recognizing the alignment between Dylan and me. This revelation reshaped the dynamics within the room, challenging the assumptions and plans each individual had made. Alea's choice, supported by her actions and words, emphasized the importance of emotional bonds and genuine care over biological ties or legal arrangements, casting a spotlight on the true meaning of family and loyalty amidst turmoil. In the midst of a heated discussion, Ben mockingly doubted the feasibility of living on Dylan's income alone, while also dismissing my financial independence due to my health condition. His assumptions were far from the truth, and his condescending tone prompted laughter from me, revealing his profound misunderstanding of our situations. Contrary to Ben's belief, I disclosed my annual income had reached $700,000, a revelation that left both Ben and Bella visibly shocked. Over the years, my career as a children's book author had flourished, with my work gaining popularity, leading to lucrative opportunities including essays, interviews, and an upcoming film adaptation significantly boosting my financial standing. Ben's disbelief was palpable, prompting me to display my bank account details to Bella, showcasing the substantial monthly deposits. The reality of my success rendered Bella speechless, overturning Ben's baseless claims. Amidst their astonishment, Ben's ill-timed suggestion for reconciliation was met with disdain from Bella, clearly driven by a sudden interest in my wealth. Disregarding Ben's plea, I firmly decided to part ways, prioritizing Alea's well-being and signaling a clear end to any further discussion. As we departed from my in-laws' home, the consequences of Ben's actions became evident. His deceitful behavior at his father-in-law's company led to his dismissal, and plans were made to employ him on a friend's fishing boat, a fate ill-suited to his preferences. The fallout continued as Bella, having lost custody to Dylan, faced divorce and estrangement from her family. Her disinterest in Ben, now devoid of the means to support her luxurious lifestyle, marked the end of their connection. Meanwhile, Ben's attempts to reach out were consistently redirected to my father-in-law, effectively halting further communication. This turn of events highlighted the profound shifts in our lives, underscoring the consequences of deceit and the value of integrity. Bella's solitary existence and Ben's challenging new path underscored the lasting impact of their choices, setting a stark contrast to the stability and fulfillment found in honesty and hard work. After her marriage unraveled, Bella found herself in a challenging situation. With no prior work experience and a history of depending on others for everything, she struggled to find stable employment. Her new reality consisted of juggling multiple part-time jobs to cover her living costs and child support obligations, barely scraping by. Alea, on the other hand, emerged as a beacon of determination and ambition. As she entered high school, she dedicated herself to her studies with an eye on studying abroad, aspiring to attend a renowned university overseas. Her dream is to translate my children's picture books and share them with kids around the globe, a goal that fills me with immense joy. Meanwhile, my own journey took a positive turn. My picture books have gained widespread acclaim, leading to increasing offers for animations and merchandise. Despite my ongoing battle with illness, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. My doctor recently hinted at the possibility of being discharged from the hospital next year. In the midst of this, Dylan's presence in my life has become a source of comfort and hope. He visits me daily with Alea, and not too long ago, he opened his heart to me, suggesting remarriage once I'm out of the hospital. His confession has stirred feelings within me, leaving me to ponder over his proposal while I continue to pour my creativity into my picture books. As I work on these stories, I can't help but dream of a joyful future for us, crafting tales of hope and happiness each day, looking forward to what lies ahead.
When I came back to my childhood home in the countryside after a 4-month absence to assist my aging parents, I was stunned to find my daughter, Allison, alone in the dark bathroom. Her once long, cherished hair lay in clumps on the floor, her clothes clinging to her soaked, slender frame. In shock, I shook her gently by the shoulders and asked, "Allison, are you all right? What on earth happened?" It took her a moment to recognize me. When she did, relief washed over her face and she burst into tears. I noticed her hair was not only crudely chopped with scissors, but also partly shaved with clippers. My heart sank. Allison was supposed to be getting married soon. As I embraced her, she began to reveal her ordeal bit by bit. "Grace and Dad hit me," she confessed. I had sensed something was off, but the reality that my husband had turned against her was a gut-wrenching betrayal. He had told Allison he would be gone for 5 days and insisted she call off her engagement before his return, a calculated attempt to sabotage her happiness. Outraged, I called him to confront him. Calmly, he informed me they were at the airport, heading to Hokkaido for a trip. His indifference in the face of what he had orchestrated was chilling. "We're about to board, so if it's anything urgent, email me," he said casually, ending the call. At that moment, my love and trust in him shattered. I whispered to Allison, "This house holds many memories of your father and our family, but it might be time to let go." She nodded in agreement. I couldn't forgive the harm they had done to her. Determined, I began planning our next steps to seek justice, and together, we left that house of pain behind. I'm Sophia, 49 years old, part of a family of 4 that includes my husband and our 2 daughters. Grace, the elder, got married 7 years ago and moved away. Our family may seem typical from the outside, but as a blended family, we face unique challenges. After losing my first husband in a tragic accident when I was 25, I was overwhelmed by grief. During his wake, my mother's stern words snapped me out of it. "Sophia, stay strong. You're a mother." Her reminder fueled a newfound resolve within me. From that moment, I knew my purpose was to protect Allison, no matter what. Despite my mother's concerns, I chose not to return to my parents' home. This house, passed down to me, symbolizes my resilience and the unbreakable bond between Allison and me. As we face these new trials, my resolve only strengthens. I will safeguard my daughter and our future with every ounce of my being. After my husband passed, the house where we had lived together, purchased shortly after our wedding, became an anchor, its mortgage to be settled by his life insurance. My mother, respecting my decision to stay, supported me from her countryside home for about 7 months. Her support helped me regain my footing faster than I'd anticipated. During this period of adjustment, I met Charles, my future husband, at my first part-time job as a single mother. The small company had a close-knit, family-like atmosphere, which made it easier to bond with my colleagues. Charles, a single father raising his daughter, quickly became a friend. His daughter, Grace, with her curly hair and infectious smile, reminded me of the challenges of parenting alone, especially as he shared his struggles understanding the emotional needs of his girl. Our friendship deepened as we supported each other through parenting challenges. We started spending more time together, taking our daughters on outings like shopping trips and aquarium visits. Seeing our children bond and support each other, our relationship naturally progressed into something more. After a year, Charles proposed. He was understanding of my past and promised to cherish those memories with me. With Allison and Grace getting along so well, I felt confident in moving forward. We soon married and decided to continue living in my previous home, which brought mixed feelings due to its association with my late husband. However, Charles, sensitive to my emotions, made a heartfelt declaration by the small Buddhist altar of my late husband, reassuring me of our new beginning together. Living together brought joy and new dynamics to our family structure. Allison, much younger than Grace, looked up to her as a big sister and followed her everywhere. Although their age difference made typical sibling play challenging, Grace embraced her role with patience and affection, making me incredibly grateful for our union. One evening, while watching TV, Allison asked about Cabbage Patch, referencing a nickname given by Grace due to Allison's bob haircut, which resembled the doll's. While Charles and I laughed at the cute comparison, it embarrassed Allison, leading her to grow out her hair. However, this seemingly innocuous choice had unforeseen consequences. Grace's friend commented on how beautiful Allison's long, straight hair was, contrasting it with Grace's curly hair. This remark hit Grace hard, especially as she navigated the tricky waters of adolescence and school where her peers occasionally mocked her natural curls. This led to a growing rift between the sisters as Grace began to distance herself from Allison, whose straight hair had inadvertently become a source of insecurity for her. Navigating these complex family dynamics, I was reminded of the delicate balance required in blending a family, understanding each member's unique feelings and perspectives, and fostering a supportive environment for all. A year after the 4 of us began living together, a chaotic scene unfolded just as I returned home from shopping. As I opened the door, Eva's loud cries echoed through the house, driving me straight to the living room. Allison, her hair unevenly chopped with a patch bald as if cut from the roots, ran up to me and clung to me, crying, "Mom, Grace did this." In a mix of shock and anger, I stormed up to Grace's room and banged on her door, demanding an explanation. I couldn't understand why Grace, a middle schooler who clearly knew right from wrong, would harm her sister like this. When my husband came home and saw Eva's hair, his immediate reaction was fury. He dragged Grace out and slapped her before she could even explain. Although his reaction was extreme, the situation was dire. Once we all calmed down and listened to Grace's side, our frustration turned to sadness. Grace had been struggling at school, and this act was a cry for attention and help. We tried to mend things by talking to the school and comforting Grace, but the damage was deep. Grace withdrew to her room, interacting with us only during meals, and refused to spend time with Allison or go out as a family. As parents, we reflected on our reactions and realized we could have approached the situation with more understanding. My husband regretted his harsh actions deeply. As a family, we had always struggled with handling difficult emotions, and now it seemed we had all reached a breaking point. When it was time for high school, Grace decided to move in with her grandparents. This distance seemed to help her find some peace, and over time, our relationship with her slowly began to heal. However, she didn't move back home until after she graduated college. Years later, after Grace had married and moved away, and Allison had started job hunting, my father-in-law passed away. This led us to live with my mother-in-law in an old, needing repair house. Initially, I thought we had a good relationship, but living together brought out tensions. My mother-in-law's constant complaints and nagging revealed long-held resentments, and managing day-to-day life became a challenge. I adopted a proactive attitude, deciding to take charge rather than dwell on the stress. "It'll work out somehow," became my motto, a trait that Allison seemed to have inherited, observing it all with a bemused smile. 4 years into this new living arrangement, Grace returned home after her divorce, which came about due to her partner's infidelity. Though she received a significant alimony, she felt the sting of loneliness. "Is it okay if I come back to my house?" she asked, seeking solace in her family home. We welcomed her back, and our family dynamic shifted again. As Grace reintegrated into the household, alliances formed between her and my mother-in-law, and it wasn't long before Eva and I felt sidelined, treated more like housekeepers than family members. My husband, while trying to support Grace, often left Eva and me feeling isolated. Through all these ups and downs, our household dynamics continued to evolve, with each member carrying their own hurts and hopes. It became clear that living together as a family meant navigating a complex web of relationships and emotions, striving for harmony while dealing with the challenges that come with it. After Grace's divorce, my husband made it clear he wanted to support her wholeheartedly. While I understood his intentions, the dynamics at home were becoming increasingly strained, and I wasn't sure how to address the growing tension. During this challenging time, I received a distressing call from my parents' home. My father had suffered a severe health setback and was hospitalized for 3 months. Hearing my mother's weary voice stirred a strong desire in me to be by their side. However, the thought of leaving Allison at home with my mother-in-law and Grace, who were less involved in household responsibilities, made me hesitant. It was Allison who reassured me, urging, "You should go, Mom. If something happens and you're not there, you'll regret it." Her words gave me the strength to make the journey back to my parents, initially intended for 3 months. As my father recovered and was discharged, my mother's health unfortunately began to decline, prompting me to extend my stay. During this period, I stayed in touch with my husband through emails and frequently spoke with Allison over the phone. It became apparent that Allison had taken on much of the household duties. I expressed my concerns to my husband, but he reassured me that Allison was managing willingly, not out of obligation. Despite his assurances, A nagging doubt about the situation at home began to grow within me, fearing that things might soon reach a breaking point. Just as my parents' health started to stabilize, Allison shared some joyful news that lifted my spirits. She was engaged and wanted to introduce her fiancé to me. Eagerly, I planned my return, coordinating with her to ensure I'd be back for the introduction. My parents, too, seemed rejuvenated by the news. However, just as I was preparing to leave, my husband called with an unexpected update. Allison's fiancé's visit had been postponed by a week. He mentioned that Allison was preoccupied and had asked him to relay this message, advising me to stay put for a little longer. His suggestion, coupled with a hastily planned trip on his part that coincided with the new date of the fiancé's visit, raised my suspicions. Despite his reassurances to take it easy, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Determined to understand the situation firsthand, I decided to return home unexpectedly on the day they left for their trip. When I arrived, the house was eerily quiet, a stark contrast to the vibrant home I remembered. A faint hissing sound drew my attention as I called out, "I'm back," with no response. After leaving my luggage at the door, I moved cautiously through the unlit house, feeling an increasing sense of unease. My worry turned to alarm when I received no reply after knocking on my mother-in-law's door. Guided by the sound, I approached the bathroom. With a deep breath, I opened the door to a dark, silent scene. Flipping the switch, I was met with a sight that took my breath away. Allison was there, but she was not the same. The scene before me was one I had never expected, prompting an involuntary scream as I stepped into the room, my heart racing with a mix of fear and confusion. After a prolonged absence, when I stepped back into our house, it was nothing like the home I remembered. I was greeted not by warmth, but by silence, and the disheartening sight of Allison, distraught and alone, in a dark bathroom. Her once long, cherished hair lay in uneven clumps around her, with some patches shaved to the scalp, and her clothes clung to her wet, slim frame. Allison, sitting despondently by the bathtub surrounded by a hissing shower head and a cleaning brush, barely acknowledged my presence until I turned off the water and approached her. "Allison, are you okay? What happened?" I asked, my voice a mixture of worry and anger. She looked up slowly, recognition flickering in her eyes, and then, as reality set in, she burst into tears. Holding her, I felt her body shake with sobs. As we embraced, Allison began to recount the harrowing events, how Grace and my husband had conspired against her. She had been cleaning the bathroom when suddenly, my husband restrained her from behind, allowing Grace to cruelly cut and shave her hair. Allison believed it was an attempt to force her to break off her engagement, as my husband had ominously instructed her to end her upcoming marriage before they returned from their trip. Anger surged through me as I called my husband, who nonchalantly confirmed they were at the airport, about to embark on a leisurely holiday in Hokkaido. His calm demeanor, in contrast to the chaos he'd left behind, was chilling. "We are heading off for a fun family trip," he said, as if our daughter's anguish was a mere afterthought. His casual dismissal of the situation stopped me in my tracks. I had intended to confront him, but his tone made me realize he was far removed from the gravity of his actions. In that moment, I felt the bonds of love and trust that had tethered me to my husband disintegrate. Allison, still clinging to me, managed to stand, and together we walked to the small Buddhist altar in the living room. The doors were closed, the photographs of my late husband, Allison's father, were hidden away, a clear sign of my husband's disregard for the past and the memories we cherished. With resolve, I opened the altar, touched the portrait of Allison's father, and swore to protect her and stand against those who harmed her. 3 days later, my husband's frantic calls began. He couldn't enter the house, he couldn't find Allison, and to his shock, he discovered the house was listed for sale. When he finally reached me, his voice was tinged with panic. "Sophia, why is the house sold? What's going on?" Calmly, I confronted him. "Why? Think about what you've done. Reflect on your actions," I said. His attempts to explain were cut short. No excuses can justify what you did to Allison. I can't forgive you, I declared. Ending the call, I felt a mix of relief and sorrow. Although drastic, selling the house was a step towards severing the ties with a past that had allowed such harm to come to my daughter. It was a declaration that I would no longer tolerate their cruelty and a promise to protect Allison, no matter what it took. The following day, Allison and I visited my in-laws, finding their Japanese-style room next to the entrance filled with the cardboard boxes that had been shipped earlier. At the doorway, Allison removed her wig and knit cap, revealing the harsh reality of her shorn and patchy hair to my husband, who couldn't bring himself to meet her eyes. He attempted an apology, his voice barely above a whisper, but it was clear neither Allison nor I were in a mood to accept it. Once we settled at home, all 5 of us gathered around a table in the same room. The tension was palpable. Grace, pointing at Allison's head, let out a laugh and hugged her stomach in mockery. "What a terrible head," she jeered, adding, "You can't possibly get married looking like that. Has your fiancé seen you yet? Has the engagement been broken off?" Her laughter filled the room, and my temper flared. "Why did you do this, Grace? Were you jealous of Allison's beautiful hair?" I confronted her, voice raised. Grace stopped laughing and shot back defiantly, "That's right." She grew it out to show off, knowing I struggle with my hair. She was provoking me. Her justification sounded absurd to Allison, who retorted, "That's nonsense. I was just growing my hair because my boyfriend liked it. I don't have time to provoke you." Grace's face turned red with anger. "All men prefer straight hair. The woman my father cheated with had long straight hair like yours. That's why I was angry. You wouldn't understand. How do you know how I feel being shaved bald?" Allison shot back, her voice cold. "If being angry justifies cutting someone's hair, is this okay?" she asked, holding up the clippers from my bag. As Allison made a move towards Grace, who was now visibly frightened, clutching at her curly locks, the atmosphere shifted drastically. Grace collapsed to the floor, sobbing, "I'm sorry. I was miserable after my divorce. I couldn't stand seeing Allison happy." Beside her, my husband also knelt, apologizing for his previous actions and for unjustly taking Grace's side out of guilt for his past mistakes. Before I could respond, my mother-in-law interjected, "Allison isn't really part of our family, so it's different. Sophia is Charles's wife, but Allison is from another man. I still haven't forgiven her for how she affected Grace back in junior high." Her words revealed a deep-seated bias and resentment that had influenced her harsh treatment towards me and Allison. "Yes, we both regret what happened," I started, but Grace wasn't the only one hurt. "Allison suffered too when her hair was cut, yet you only seemed to feel sorry for Grace." The room fell silent, the power dynamics between Grace and Allison from those days starkly apparent again. My mother-in-law had nothing more to say, realizing perhaps the imbalance she had fostered. Breaking the heavy silence, my husband started, his voice shaky. "It's been hard for me, seeing Frances grow up to look just like her father. I was jealous, afraid you'd think of him instead of seeing me." This confession shed light on the insecurity that my mother-in-law had exploited, attempting to sow division within our family. I looked at my husband, tears now freely flowing down his face, and reminded him of his vow to love me with all my memories, inclusive of those with Allison's father. The room, filled with tension and past grievances, seemed to pause as we all confronted the deep-seated issues that had brought us to this point. The journey to healing was going to be long and fraught, but it was clear that open, honest conversations were the first step towards mending the fractures within our family. With a resolute gesture, I extended a document towards my husband. "I want a divorce," I declared, my voice unwavering. My husband's eyes widened in disbelief. "This can't be happening," he stammered, but I was firm, my decision irrevocable. "I've thought this through," I continued. "And I've discussed this with Allison's fiancé, given the circumstances. He agrees that it's best if you don't attend the wedding." As Allison clutched my arm, A clear sign she was ready to leave this place of bitterness, my mother-in-law sprang to her feet, her voice tinged with panic. "Wait! What about the house? This one is old, and I can't stay here." Her question about the house I had sold without consulting Charles brought a fresh wave of tension. "That house was left to me by Allison's father, and it is legally in my name," I responded coolly, locking eyes with her. "You wouldn't want to live in a house built by someone you never respected, right?" Her response was a tremble of her lips. She sat down, silenced by the truth. As Allison and I headed for the door, she paused and turned to address my husband and Grace sternly. "This isn't over. I've spoken to the police." The room froze. "That day, we talked to the police," I explained, as the gravity of her words sank in. "The officer had advised us to consider carefully due to the familial ties, but my resolve had only hardened. I am going to file a police report against both Grace and her father," Allison declared, her voice cold and determined. My husband pleaded, desperation coloring his tone. "Please, don't involve the police. We are family. Think about your wedding. You don't want to be the daughter of a criminal." I felt a surge of indignation at his plea. "Family?" I scoffed. "You and Grace have shattered that notion by your actions. It's you who've made Allison the daughter of a criminal, not her decision to seek justice." Seeing him so shaken and desperate, as if clinging to the last strands of hope, did little to sway my resolve. "If you truly cared about us, you'd respect my decision. Let's end this marriage cleanly and ensure that the financial matters, including the insurance money left by Allison's father, are settled fairly." Leaving the house, the stale air of the lingering disputes behind us, Allison and I stepped into the fresh air outside, a symbolic gesture of moving on from the toxicity that had clouded our lives. We shared a look of mutual relief and understanding before heading to the police station. There, we formalized our complaints, and in due course, my husband and Grace were charged and fined. While they avoided jail time, the stain of a criminal record was an indelible mark on their actions. Allison and I, now free from the oppressive atmosphere of deceit and manipulation, could finally look forward to rebuilding our lives on our own terms, strengthened by the trials we had overcome together. After my husband was dismissed from his job due to his criminal record, and with retirement just around the corner, our family's circumstances took a steep downturn. Their house, falling into disrepair, required urgent renovations they could no longer afford. Meanwhile, Allison and I moved into a modest 2-bedroom apartment, which was more manageable financially. Despite these upheavals, Allison's wedding plans remained on track, scheduled for 7 months ahead. In an unexpected gesture, my ex-husband reached out, offering to fund Allison's wedding as a form of reparation. However, knowing their strained finances, especially after the fines, Allison and I declined his offer. We didn't want her special day to be overshadowed by the burden of his debts. Some time later, I received a heartfelt letter from Grace. It was an apology, reflecting a profound realization of her long-held obsession with her hair, a source of deep-seated envy that had poisoned her against Allison. Reading her words, I couldn't help but feel a wave of sadness for the pain her insecurities had caused. I hoped that this acknowledgement was the first step toward Grace healing and finding peace within herself. Allison, embracing her new beginning, dyed her hair a vibrant milk tea shade that beautifully complemented her fair complexion. She proved that being a bride isn't about conforming to traditional expectations about hair length or style, it's about feeling confident and true to oneself. As Allison prepared to start her new life, I made plans for the future as well. Once she moved out, I intended to return to my parents' home. Having completed my duties as her mother, it felt right to give back to my parents, taking care of them as they once did for me. Sitting together in our apartment, Allison and I shared a laugh, reflecting on the trials we had overcome. "It'll all work out," we reassured each other, ready to begin this new chapter with optimism and resilience. With Allison by my side, I felt a renewed strength to face whatever challenges might come. Our journey had been full of turmoil, yet it had brought us to a place of clarity and empowerment. As we stood on the brink of new beginnings, we knew that love and perseverance were our greatest allies. With smiles and determination, we were prepared to step boldly into the future, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. Thank you for following our story. How did it resonate with you? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories like this one. Your feedback and support are greatly appreciated.
After my father's funeral, I faced a significant decision regarding the $9 million inheritance he left behind. I chose to share it equally with my mother, a choice that seemed straightforward until Stephen's involvement complicated matters. While reviewing the inheritance documents without my consent, Stephen casually commented, "Inaya, don't be too greedy," and even mentioned quitting his job, thanking that doddering old man, a disrespectful reference to my late father that I couldn't ignore. Caught off guard by his words, I reacted, and our conversation soon took a backseat as Stephen and my mother-in-law excitedly made plans to splurge on a new car and shopping sprees. This blatant disregard for the somber mood and their insensitive behavior pushed me to my emotional limits. Overwhelmed by household responsibilities, constant demands for money, and their Stephen of respect for my father, I found myself wanting to escape the toxic environment of living with Stephen and my mother-in-law. Attempting to keep the peace, I masked my frustration with a smile and encouraged them to use the inheritance as they wished. Despite my growing resentment, I am Inaya, a 34-year-old who once worked alongside my husband in a domestic setting. My parents, both doctors, managed a reputable clinic in our hometown. As their only child, I was deeply cherished. After graduating from the School of Pharmacy, I landed a job at a laboratory technician company. Although my career path diverged from what my parents envisioned, they supported my choices. The loss of my mother in a tragic accident 10 years ago devastated both my father and me. During those tough times, Stephen, who was then my boyfriend, stood by me. We initially met through a mutual friend, and 2 years after my mother's passing, Stephen proposed. He worked as a regular food technologist and beverage industry, and despite earning less than me, I believed in our ability to overcome many challenges together. When I shared the news of our engagement, my father was delighted, appreciating Stephen's support and entrusting him with my care. However, the bliss was short-lived when we visited Stephen's family to announce our marriage. His mother, with her garish makeup and having been divorced from Stephen's father, scrutinized me harshly. She questioned Stephen's choice in marrying someone she deemed too plain and old for him, suggesting a younger, prettier match would be more suitable. Stephen quickly defended me, highlighting my successful career and my father's reputable medical practice. This series of events, from my father's death and dealing with the inheritance to facing familial tensions, has tested my resilience and forced me to reconsider the dynamics of my relationships and the true intentions of those closest to me. Despite Stephen's initial enthusiasm about our marriage, I felt an underlying unease that I couldn't dismiss. Everything seemed to fall into place when my father, a doctor and real estate investor, generously gifted us a luxurious apartment in New York City as a wedding present. I was thrilled to share this news with Stephen, envisioning our new life together in this beautiful setting. "This is our new home," I told him, filled with dreams of a happy and peaceful future. Stephen's smile mirrored my happiness, and it felt like the perfect start to our married life. However, the reality of our day-to-day life began to surface soon after the wedding. Stephen, who had lived with his parents up until our marriage, seemed completely unaware of how to manage basic household tasks. He couldn't cook, was baffled by the washing machine, and showed little interest in learning any domestic skills. His careless attitude was evident as he left messes around the house, never bothering to tidy up. While I had hoped for a partnership where we shared responsibilities, I found myself shouldering all the domestic burdens. During our first year of marriage, I tried to manage the household alone, attributing our issues to the typical adjustment period of the honeymoon phase. However, the strain of balancing work and an overwhelming amount of chores pushed me to my limits. By our second year together, I knew we needed to address these issues head-on. Determined to find a solution, I initiated a serious conversation with Stephen about sharing the household duties. To my disappointment, his response lacked any sense of responsibility or willingness to adapt. "I'm tired from work too," he said dismissively. "You're much better at chores than I am, right? It's better if you do them since I'm not good at it." His words felt like a dismissal of my feelings and efforts. leaving me to continue bearing the brunt of our household responsibilities. This realization that I might always have to manage our home alone added a layer of frustration to our marriage, revealing deeper issues in our relationship that extended beyond mere household chores. I discovered that Stephen's mother had very particular tastes, which added another layer of complexity to our relationship. Stephen was not particularly keen on celebrating occasions like Mother's Day, so I took it upon myself to pick out a thoughtful gift. I chose a high-quality scarf from a department store, hoping it would please her. However, her reaction was far from grateful. She called me, expressing her disappointment because the scarf wasn't from a well-known luxury brand. She found it absurd that I had sent her a no-name item. Despite my attempts to explain the quality of the scarf, she insisted on receiving only luxury brand items. Shocked by her reaction, I relayed the incident to Stephen, hoping for some support. Yet, his response was dismissive. He simply suggested complying with her demands. From that point on, to avoid further displeasure, we started giving her cash as she demanded. Over time, as our marriage progressed into the 7th year, she began to visit our home frequently, often finding reasons to ask for more money. Stephen always complied without hesitation, despite the strain it placed on our already tight finances. As Stephen's income was modest, managing our daily expenses became a challenge, pushing me to occasionally dip into our savings to make ends meet. Despite these challenges, I acknowledged the importance of his mother in his life and, by extension, in mine, since she had supported me during some difficult times. Respecting her as someone significant to my husband, I endured these difficulties. By our 8th year of marriage, the routine had become all too familiar. I managed all the household chores and continued to handle the financial demands from my mother-in-law. During this taxing time, my father, whom I hadn't seen in a while, called me with devastating news. In a rare and emotional conversation, he revealed he was suffering from terminal cancer, and treatment was no longer an option. The news overwhelmed me, and as tears flowed, he comforted me as he had when I was a child, gently saying, "Inaya, this is fate. Let's accept it quietly." The burden of managing work, household responsibilities, and now frequent visits to my father's hospital became my reality. When I informed Stephen about my father's condition, his reaction was indifferent at best, offering only a hollow expression of sympathy and no real support. He visited my father just once in the hospital. As my father's care intensified, I found myself with no spare time or energy for Stephen, who seemed increasingly detached from the challenges I was facing. This period was a relentless juggling act that tested the limits of my resilience and our marriage's stability. As I sat by my father's hospital bed, he suddenly asked, "Inaya, how is your marriage with Stephen going?" Caught off guard by the question, I paused, reflecting on Stephen's distant attitude and his mother's demanding behavior. My hesitation must have conveyed more than words could, as my father gently told me, "Inaya, you don't have to endure this. Think about your happiness. Don't worry. You won't face any hardships after I'm gone." His words were a balm, but they also opened the floodgates of my emotions, and I wept as he held my hand, offering silent strength. 3 months later, my father passed away. The grief was immense, and I busied myself with funeral arrangements. Stephen, displaying a lack of empathy, did not assist with the preparations. Despite his indifference, the funeral was well attended, a testament to the many lives my father had touched. Both Stephen and his mother were there, their presence almost perfunctory. The day after the funeral, I received a call from a lawyer about my father's estate. It turned out that my father had left more than just memories. He had amassed over $9 million from his medical practice and savvy real estate investments. The weight of this inheritance was both a surprise and a burden, stirring a mix of gratitude and anxiety within me. After meeting with the lawyer and learning the details of the inheritance, I returned home exhausted. I spread the documents across my desk, but soon dozed off on the sofa, worn out by the day's emotions and revelations. I was awakened by the sound of cheerful voices. Stephen and his mother were unexpectedly in my home. As I sat up, disoriented, Stephen came over with a grin, holding the inheritance papers I had just received. "Yes, Inaya, well done," he exclaimed. Confused and still groggy, I realized he was holding the documents. "Wait, don't just read those without asking," I protested, my voice tinged with shock and anger. Unperturbed by my reaction, my mother-in-law chimed in excitedly. "Wow, an inheritance of $9 million. Isn't that amazing? Now we can live comfortably for the rest of our lives." Her enthusiasm, so starkly contrasting with the solemnity of the recent days, only added to my confusion and burgeoning resentment. At that moment, I realized that the challenges ahead might not just involve managing a large fortune, but also navigating the complex dynamics of my relationship with Stephen and his mother, whose interests suddenly seemed sharply focused on the financial windfall. I was still reeling from my father's funeral when my mother-in-law blurted out something that caught me completely off guard. Then, Stephen turned to me with a serious expression and dropped another bombshell. "By the way, about this $9 million, he began. "I've decided it will be split between me and my mom." His words were like a punch in the gut, especially since he'd snooped through the inheritance documents without my permission. His next comments added insult to injury. "Inaya, don't be too greedy. Oh, now I can finally quit my job. I have to thank that doddering old man." His reference to my late father with such disrespect made me inadvertently speak out loud in shock. Stephen, ignoring my reaction and confusion, quickly moved on. "Let's proceed with the inheritance process and get the money into our joint account as soon as possible." As if on cue, he and my mother-in-law started excitedly planning out how to spend the money on a new car and lavish shopping sprees. Their blatant disregard for my feelings pushed me to the edge. I was burdened with household chores, constant demands for money, and now this disrespect towards my father. Trying to contain my boiling anger, I replied with a forced smile. "Sure, use the money however you and my mother-in-law please." Her reaction was immediate and pleased. "That's the spirit, Inaya," quick to agree. "Now, make sure you work hard and earn money. I don't want our savings to decrease. So work hard." I just nodded, seething inside while pretending to absorb her selfish demands. After this exchange, Stephen and my mother-in-law started living extravagantly as if they had won the lottery. Stephen quit his job almost immediately, and my mother-in-law practically moved in with us, turning our home into her own. They would leave in the morning and return laden with luxury brand purchases, even critiquing the 3-star restaurants they dined at as being a bit underwhelming for us, the sophisticated ones. Their conversations revolved around their new lavish lifestyle, while I was left to manage all the household chores, treated more like a servant than a family member. Stephen seemed to believe that my father's inheritance was a never-ending resource. He carelessly withdrew money from our joint account, and soon my own savings of $290,000 began to dwindle alarmingly. When I expressed my concern over their excessive spending, Stephen just laughed it off, showing no regard for the financial strain they were putting us under. I had already expressed my concern about their lavish spending, pointing out, "Isn't $9 million coming soon? This kind of spending is no big deal." But Stephen shrugged off my warnings. A month later, to my surprise, Stephen and my mother-in-law announced they were taking a trip to Hawaii without me. I waved them off, alone, and resolved to take action. About a week after their departure, while I was enjoying a quiet moment at home, I was startled by a loud knock at the door. Peering through the intercom monitor, I saw Stephen and my mother-in-law, clad in aloha shirts, looking perplexed outside. "What do you want?" I asked, my tone calm yet icy. "Why won't the door open?" Stephen shouted, frustration evident in his voice. Standing firm, I replied through the intercom, "Well, I changed the locks, so of course it won't open." "What? Why? Let's talk this over calmly at the nearby cafe. Please go ahead. I'll join you shortly," I suggested. After some futile shouting, they headed to the cafe. Once they were gone, I followed, prepared for a confrontation. Upon arriving at the cafe, I found Stephen and his mother already there, seething with anger. "Hey, what's this about? Did you change the locks? Hand over the new keys right now," Stephen demanded. "There's no need for me to give you the new keys. You both need to leave that house," I replied calmly, facing an irate Stephen. I then presented them with a document. It was a divorce petition I had already filled out. "Divorce? You're serious about divorcing me?" Stephen was shocked, his voice rising in disbelief. His mother, equally astounded, chimed in. "Inaya, why has it come to this?" I spoke quietly, addressing their panic and confusion. "Given how you've been spending lavishly every day, are you sure your finances are okay?" "What money? Of course, it's fine," Stephen retorted vehemently, spittle flying as he spoke. "Your father's inheritance is coming, right? There should still be over $90,000 in our joint account. Look, I'll show you right now." Saying this, Stephen pulled out his smartphone and opened the banking app to check the account. As the screen loaded, his confident expression faltered and then changed abruptly. What's this? Why is there?" His voice trailed off as he stared at the screen, the reality of the financial situation hitting him. When Stephen saw that the money was missing from our account, his confusion was palpable. "The money's gone. It was there just the other day," he exclaimed. His mother, equally alarmed, checked her own phone, her expression mirroring Stephen's bewilderment. As they scrambled to understand what had happened, I calmly unveiled the reality of the situation. "Of course, it's gone. I'm divorcing you. So I've moved that $90,000 to my own account as part of the property division," I explained. "What do you mean?" Stephen's initial shock quickly turned to anger. But then he smirked, as if he had suddenly remembered something important. "Fine, I'll divorce you then. Transfer the inheritance you got from your dad right away. After all, property acquired during the marriage is split half and half in a divorce, right?" "You might be misunderstanding something," I responded coolly. "Didn't you know? The inheritance I received, even though it was during our marriage, doesn't count towards property division." There was a moment of heavy silence as this information sank in. Stephen and his mother's expressions shifted dramatically, the realization dawning on them that they might not have a claim to my inheritance. They were visibly shocked, and I could only sigh in disbelief at their audacity. "No, that can't be true. That's impossible," Stephen's mother exclaimed, her face flushing a mix of denial and anger. "Please, check for yourself," I said, my tone laced with mockery. Stephen frantically began searching on his smartphone, trying to find any information that might contradict what I had just told them. As Stephen and his mother stared at the smartphone screen, the reality of the legal situation became undeniable. It says here property inherited by one spouse from a parent is considered separate property. Therefore, it's not subject to division and can't be split between the spouses. Stephen read aloud, his voice tinged with disbelief. "What? Seriously?" his mother exclaimed, her face a picture of shock, then desperation seeping into his tone. Stephen turned to me. "Inaya, please don't divorce me. I have no savings and no job. How am I supposed to live if you leave me?" Facing him, I responded with a clarity and firmness I had never shown before. "What are you talking about? Take responsibility for your actions. I will never forget how you and your mother treated me. I'm divorcing you, and I'll go to court if I have to." Intimidated by my determined demeanor, which they had never seen, Stephen and his mother visibly recoiled, whimpering softly, leaving them dejected in the cafe. I walked out, resolute in my decision. The divorce proceedings went smoothly thereafter. The $90,000 I had moved from our joint account was acknowledged as part of the marital property division. Eventually, I managed to remove Stephen and his mother from my house. Stephen, having already squandered the money from our property division, found himself penniless, overwhelmed by bills from their lavish overseas trips and other expenses charged to his credit card. He quickly sank into debt. Stephen and his mother were forced to take on even more debt to manage these payments, and now live in a rundown apartment, working tirelessly every day to pay off their debts. The stark contrast to their former lavish lifestyle was a significant shock to them. On the other hand, after selling the condo I once shared with Stephen, I moved into the apartment that had belonged to my father. I continued working as before. But now, with the inheritance from my father, I live a financially comfortable life. With gratitude to my late father in my heart, I am determined to start anew and cherish my life ahead. I aim to protect my happiness and spend my days peacefully, embracing the lessons I've learned and the freedom I've gained.